Today we're going to go ahead and pull the starter motor and change out the O-ring. My 690 is a 2018. Where the starter motor inserts into the case, I think there was some kind of a milling issue or something like that because it's not a smooth opening. And so that original O-ring doesn't create a good enough seal, and occasionally you get some oil that burps out. And I just topped off the oil and did a nice ride a few days ago. Came home and there was oil kind of spotting below the bike. You can see it a little bit kind of down in this area here and back there from where I had it parked earlier, but you can see all of this oil. Now this is accumulated over several rides. I just haven't wanted to get into fixing it yet, but basically it blows out from the other side of that starter motor and just kind of seeps very slowly down the case, collects dirt, makes its way to the skid plate and drops. So we're going to get into how we make that change, because it is a little tricky turning the starter motor while it's still inside the bike and putting a new O-ring on and kind of inspecting the area. So hopefully we'll be able to get some good pictures or video of that process. So now we're looking at the bike with the entire exhaust system removed and the Vanish skid plate and the T-Rex bar. For my particular bike, because I have the T-Rex bar and that Vanish skid plate that has really good coverage, I can no longer just kind of pull the pipe easily. I have to take those two things off, which isn't that bad. Just takes a little longer. Pop off that half of the T-Rex bar, pop off the skid plate, and then we can get to those two bolts for the header. Before we get into the starter motor, I just wanted to point out one thing. A couple years ago, last year, I did an event called the Parker Dash, put on by GPS Kevin, or his son actually led it. It was a great ride from Indio to Parker and back. But somewhere in the middle, occasionally my bike would not start. Like I'd hit the button and nothing would happen, there would be no start. And when I investigated, it was because the power wire that comes in here actually threads into the threads of this metal plate, and those threads had come out, and so it was basically just barely touching. And so I would get these kind of crazy little arc sparks when I checked it out. So I went ahead and just introduced a nut to the back side of it, and now it's super solid. So that might just be something, if you have this type of connection going into your starter motor, if you want to just make it extra secure, you can just add a nut to the back side of it here, and that way it won't unthread and come apart on you. You have two bolts that you need to remove here, and one of them has a grounding strap attached to it. One thing that's kind of important is to inspect the grounding strap. I noticed that mine has gotten caught on the bolt next to it and probably sent home with it. So there's a couple of frayed wires in there, so I might go ahead and replace that grounding strap. But as for the starter motor itself, we just have these two bolts. Move that strap out of the way. This piece is attached up here, so you just undo one screw and it pops off of that post, and then you can move it out of the way. And now we have our starter motor. Oh, and also I took that nut we discussed earlier out so that it's now completely free. Wiggle it and twist it around, and it's just kind of in there by its O-ring. So the next step is we'll get the camera situated and work on a good angle to show how we turn that within the bike to expose that O-ring. The starter motor has just been kind of popped out, so unseated. So the O-ring has kind of popped out of the case, and now it's free, so we can wiggle it around, stuff like that. Now what we want to do is essentially flip it to expose the splines in the O-ring. And to do that, the first step is to just kind of move this cable out of the way. And we're going to give the motor a turn. Now we can take that starter motor and just kind of pull it while we push upward and rotate. And then we're going to be able to push the motor to the other side within the frame and expose the splines and expose the O-ring. So now you can see we have an exposed O-ring and the spline. All right, so we have our new O-ring in place around the end of the starter motor here. And now we just need to go about rotating it back into position.